morning, everyone, but good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to present about Copilot Agent governance here at the Global Power Platform Bootcamp Poland. So, as you already maybe heard in our first chit chat, I'm Tom Mullens. I'm originally from Belgium, but I live in Norway. So I live and work in Norway at Vivicta, and I'm the Power Platform team lead for Norway. And I have background in SharePoint on-prem development many years ago. And in the past years, I've been focusing more on the Power Platform, and these days a lot about Copilot and Copilot Agents. If you want, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn so that we can connect. And if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well, so that I can answer your questions. So let's dive into Copilot Agent governance. When we talk about Copilot Agent governance, it's always finding the balance, because we want to give people the freedom to experiment, to explore the possibilities with Copilot Agents, but we actually want to do it in a safe way. So when you have conversations with, for example, a customer about governance, about Copilot Agent governance, try to get as many people involved in those conversations, because you have a security officer in a company, you maybe have IT managers in the company, but you also have business within the company. And it's really important that when you discuss governance, that you interact with all these people, because a security officer has different opinions, or maybe opinions that an IT manager is not thinking about. And why is this important? Because we need to find the balance in this governance, because otherwise we will get an overload of agents, typically called agent 1, 2, 3, 4, or test agents, and maybe agents doing exactly the same. So that's something that we want to avoid. And also, if we compare it with what happened with COVID, suddenly we had to work from home and everybody started using Teams and started creating teams without any governance. We had to do a cleanup afterwards. So that's why I always advise to start talking about governance before you actually start building agents. Because if you already start building agents without any governance, you need to do a cleanup afterwards again, and that is taking a lot of time. When we look at Copilot Agent governance, there are multiple places where we can configure these things. We can configure it in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. We can configure it at the Power Platform Admin Center, and also on environment levels. So it is also a top-down way of setting the permissions, or the settings, I mean. You can actually compare it with, for example, SharePoint permissions, which you also set on site collection, and they are pushed down towards folders or files, but you can break them somewhere in the middle if you want. So let's get started with the Microsoft 365 tenant admin setting. So that's where we can find the Microsoft Agent 365. I think this morning there was already a session about from Marco, who talked more into depth about Microsoft Agent 365. This is what you can find in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And here you can already configure certain things. I'll show it in a minute how you and what you can do. Another place, or maybe already one level more in depth, is the Power Platform Admin Center, where you can also define certain tenant settings. Like, for example, do we have a group of people who are Copilot Studio authors, for example? So these are settings that we can do on tenant level. So let's switch to my browser. Let's see if I can find it. So here you see my admin portal, where I'm a global admin. And here you will see that in my left navigation, I already have two navigation options, Copilot and Agents. So in that way, it's already confusing that you can find settings at different locations. But when we look at the agent tab, you will see that you have, for example, all agents, where you get an overview of all the agents that can be used within your tenant. You see, for example, external partner agents, but you can also filter over here, for example, published by your organization. So here you see the agents that, for example, have been created by myself or maybe by some colleagues. So here you can get an overview of what is going on. Here I can also decide, for example, hey, this HR self-service agent, I see it already multiple times, like an HR self-service agent, an HR policy assistant agent, another assistant, but a classic one. So in that way, I don't want to use all these agents, so I can decide over here to block these agents, for example. But when we look at governance, we need to set certain settings. So for example, here within the tools, you can decide that certain MCP servers, like the Teams MCP server, okay, it is available, but is it something that we really want to use already? Is it something that we allow at this moment? So in case you don't want to allow it, you can block it already over here. So this is the highest level where you can do it. Within the settings, you can configure certain additional settings, like the sharing options, the templates, the allowed agent, and user access. One of the important settings that I always discuss with customers is, for example, the external language models. This setting cannot be found yet under Agents and Settings. For this one, you still need to go to Copilot, Settings, Data Access, and here you see AI providers operating as Microsoft subprocessors. This is actually the external language models. So do you want to make this available for agent makers within your tenant, yes or no? So here you see, for example, that it's disabled by default, but I can enable it if I want. If I discuss it with my security officer and IT manager, for example. So this is the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. When I go to the Power Platform Admin Center, I can go to Manage Tenant Settings. And here you will get all the tenant settings which can be set for the Power Platform. It is, of course, a mix concerning settings for Power Apps, Power Automate, but also Copilot. So for example, if you search over here for Copilot, Studio, Copilot, you see that you get certain settings which you can set. I'm actually missing some of the settings. So has there been an update, yes or no? So let me search again, Copilot. Now I have everything again. So here you see that, for example, you can decide, okay, if people use Copilots, do we allow, for example, the thumbs up or the thumbs down? And if somebody clicks on thumbs down to give feedback about the result of Copilot, you can also get a text box where users can provide feedback, additional feedback. That's, for example, the additional Copilot feedback. If I want to disable, for example, this thumbs up or thumbs down, I can do it over here. So here, for example, you already see that giving feedback or the thumbs up is not allowed on tenant level. What I noticed recently is that if you go to Copilot settings, these tenant settings for Copilot are popping up over here as well. So what I notice is that these tenant settings via manage and tenant settings are also now becoming available via the screen. So Microsoft is making it easier for us again. They are distributing all or making these options available at different places. So Copilot feedback is, for example, over here available, and some other hosted browser in Copilot and some others as well. So this is Microsoft 365 Admin Center and the Power Platform Admin Center, where we can set default governance settings. When we go deeper into Copilot Agent governance, we need to think about our environments and so on. What I typically do is when I go to a customer is check immediately the default environment. What is going on in the default environment? Because that often gives a view on how well the customer has control over their Power Platform governance. Many times you see a lot of tests within this default environment. And is this something that you want to allow, yes or no? Yes, you want to give people a place where they can explore and play, but is the default environment the right place? Because it maybe starts with just testing certain things, but suddenly people are integrating business data within these automations or flows or agents, and then it becomes business critical agents, and this is something what we want to avoid. So therefore, it's really important that we define a strategy for our environments. But there's one level above this environment strategy. Above this environment strategy, we actually need to define a zone strategy, because this zone strategy will give us the possibility to set rules based on the technical complexity or the impact of a certain agent. For example, when in this example, let's go to this slide. The general advice is to work with three different zones. The first zone is actually the zone where people can play around. They can test, they can explore our agents, and our environment strategy that we attach to this zone is personal developer environments for each person who wants to try. Based on this zone and environment strategy, we define our rules. So for example, do we want to allow people to share an agent that they created in their personal environment with a colleague? Is that something that we want to allow, yes or no? These kind of more strict rules we're going to apply on zone 1 environments. When we go deeper into zone 2 and 3, you see that zone 2 is more where we work together or collaborate, for example, between a department and IT. But at the end, the department is still responsible for that agent. So here we see that we're already creating more advanced agents with maybe some integrations with some business data or more critical integrations. So here we need some more flexible rules and also a different environment strategy. Here we will, for example, use dev, test, and production environments so that we can also have development pipelines so that some people work together on the agent in the dev environment. They publish it or they move it to test. And here some specific people will start testing the agent. And after those tests, we move to production. And then the last zone, number 3, that's actually the one where IT or maybe a vendor like Vivicta is fully responsible for the maintenance or the deployment of the agent. And typically it's a combination of low-code agents with Copilot Studio, but also pro-code agents with, for example, Azure AI Foundry. But this is a general advice. When I talk with customers, I always explain them the general advice, but at the end, it is the customer who needs to decide what the best zone strategy is for them. This is not a story that fits for everyone. Based on the needs or the strategy or the vision from the company, with the Power Platform and Copilot agents, this can be different. So that's something that needs to be discussed with the customer. But it's really important to have this in place. Once you have documented this, you can actually start configuring your settings on tenant level maybe, because maybe a certain setting is not allowed across all the zones, but also on environment setting. When you have an environment, on an environment, you can already decide what kind of possibilities an agent maker has. The typical example there is, are end user credentials allowed, or only, or are maker provider credentials allowed, or only end user credentials. So for example, this one. And that's a very common one to discuss. This is what we can do with the standard environments. To apply more governance rules on an environment, we can also create data policies. With these data policies, we can configure what kind of connectors can be used by agent makers when they configure or make their agent in Copilot Studio. This can have an impact on knowledge, skills, on what kind of channels they can use. For example, do we want to make the WhatsApp channel available to publish certain information or to publish our agent to? So these are the standard function or governance settings that we can apply with standard environments. So let's have a closer look to these settings. So when I go back to my Power Platform Admin Center, I click on Manage. And here you will see that I have a couple of environments in this Power Platform Admin Center. And here I have the Power Platform Bootcamp environment. And when I click on this one, I can go to the settings. And in these settings, I can configure, for example, the maker versus end user credentials. So when everything is loaded, I can configure these things. For example, on this environment, I don't want to give people the possibility to use, for example, maker provided credentials. So in that way, I untick this box and I click on Save. From the moment that this is saved, this setting is applied and people will not be able to use these maker provided credentials. There are also other possibilities for on environment level, like computer use and others that can be set. When we want to apply policies, we need to go to Security, Data and Privacy, Data Policy. As you can see, this environment is not really well configured because I actually have no policy in place for my environments. So how can I create a new policy? I can do that by clicking on New. First, I need to give the name, Bootcamp Poland, for example. Next. And then after waiting a little bit, I get all the connectors which are available. So what I can do is I can actually start searching for Copilot Studio. And here you actually get the list of all the connectors that can be used. So for example, if I don't want to use or I don't want to make the Facebook channel available for agent makers, I can actually just block it in this way, and in that way the Facebook channel cannot be used by agent makers. Another interesting thing that I want to share with you is about public websites. Sometimes, or in some cases, it can be really interesting that you have the connection available towards public websites. But the question is, do we want to enable this for everyone or do we want to enable it so that every website can be used? Yes, or maybe no. So what we can do, we can keep this connection connector available for people, but via the connector endpoints, we can actually decide like, okay, but this certain website is not allowed to be used, or we only allow one or two websites to be used as public knowledge for our agents. So here you can already fine tune your the settings of your connector. But when you move to managed environments, you get even more possibilities. So let's go back to the slides. When you have an environment, by default, it's often an unmanaged environment. Why? Because there can be a license question behind it. Because to make use of managed environments, you need to have either premium Power Platform licenses or Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses. And when you have these licenses, I definitely advise to enable your or to move your unmanaged environments to managed environments, because you get by default more possibilities concerning governance. From the moment that you enable a managed environment, you can, for example, decide, okay, within this environment, people cannot share an agent with colleagues as editor or as viewer. So you get more functionalities on environment level. But you can also start making use of environment groups. Because at the end, when we look at app development or Copilot agent development, you can end up with quite a lot of environments. But you don't want to manage them one by one. If I can automate something, I always try to do that. And with environment groups, you can automate that in a certain way. Because with an environment group, you combine a set of environments in a group, and you apply policies or rules at once to these environments. So in that way, if you want to change a rule on a certain set of environments, you can do it in, let's call it 2 clicks, instead of opening every environment one by one. So it makes it easier to apply rules at once. Remember the zone 1, where we talked about personal development or exploration of features within Copilot agents? When you have environment routing enabled, you can actually guide users directly to a developer environment, the Zone 1 developer environment. You can actually set different rules. So for example, for Power Apps, Power Automate desktop flows, these days also Power Automate flows, so I'm missing this one on this print screen, but also for Copilot Studio. What does that mean? If you have environment routing enabled, and the user goes to, for example, make.powerapps.com or Copilot Studio, they will be redirected to their developer environment by default. So in that way, they don't have to switch manually between the default and their developer environment. That's already one thing. But also the other thing is, if they don't have a developer environment yet, it will be created automatically. And when you define these environment routing, you can also say like, okay, when the new developer environment for this person is created, assign it automatically to the environment group. And in that way, the right rules are applied at once. So immediately everything is applied to these developer environments, so they cannot change these. So these settings are governance settings are applied. So how does this look? Let's go back to the Power Platform Admin Center and go to Manage. So here you see that I have my Power Platform bootcamp environment, which is an unmanaged, but I also have a managed one with a very original name, managed. When I open this one, I can still go to settings and configure exactly the same things as with an unmanaged one. So here again, the end user maker provided credentials, for example. When I go a couple steps back, I can also click on Edit Managed Environments. And here you see that you will get some additional settings. For example, Manage Sharing. When I open the Copilot Studio part of it, here you can see, or here you see that I have two options that I can configure from governance point of view. I can decide that on this environment that people can or cannot share agents with colleagues with editor permissions or viewer. Um, so here, for example, only share with individuals. So this is already an additional setting that you get when you enable the managed environments. So this is already great. So let's say in this way, let people grant editor permissions when agents are shared. We don't want it. They can only share it with viewer permissions and only share with individuals. And let's set it to not 20, but maybe only to 2 colleagues. So now when you create an agent in this environment, you cannot share it with edit permissions, only with viewer permissions and with maximum 2 colleagues. Let's save this. So this is great. But imagine that you have multiple environments like this. I want to do it at once. So what I can do is I can go in the left navigation to environment groups, click on new group and call it Bootcamp Poland. You need to give it a description as well, like this. Save. And now my environment group has been created. I can assign environments to this. So let's sort or search for my environment, bootcamp. So I'm gonna add my managed environment, add environment. I can also add my other one, but normally you will get a message like add environment. Okay, we can, or this environment can be added to this environment group, but it needs to be converted to a managed environment. So that's a feature that requires managed environments. So cancel, because I only want to use that one environment in this group. So this is great. My environment has been added, and now I can define rules at once. So let's search for the maker credentials again. So here, for example, the control maker credential options. If I select this one, here you see that you get exactly the same options as via the settings from the environment. But here I want to untick the maker provided credentials, save, and maybe I want to do the sharing as well. So sharing with viewer permissions. I'm gonna, no, cancel. I'm gonna do the editor permissions, and here I'm gonna enable it again. So now I've configured certain rules, and when I publish these rules, you will notice that these will take over the settings that I've just set before manually on my environment. So when I go back to environment, to the managed one, settings and features, You will see that this one, the control maker credential options, has been grayed out, so I cannot change it over here because now it is managed via my environment group. So if I want to change these settings, I need to do it via my environment group. So if everything went well, it's exactly the same for this one. So the editors and the viewers, that's now all managed by my environment group, which is really great that I can do it at one location. As you can see in my environment, in my Power Platform environment, you see that we have some new environments created for a person specific. So a developer environment for this person specific. Just to prove it, it is created like 2 days ago and 3 days ago. And for these developer environments, I have environment routing enabled. So I have a rule that's Copilot Studio, developer rule that everyone, when they create a new developer environment, it goes by default in the green zone. So when I go to the green zone and I sort on created on, you see that these two environments, which have been created by the user by going to Copilot Studio, are automatically assigned to this environment group. So in that way, the rules are applied at once. So in that way, I automated the enforcement of my governance rules. Okay, let's go back to the slides. That's one part of governance, setting all these rules on all these different levels. But on the other hand, we also need to keep an eye on what is really going on with these agents. What are the agents doing in my tenants? At the beginning, when we started with Copilot Agents, there was not a lot of monitoring possibilities available. But now you see that more and more reports are popping up in the Power Platform Admin Center, but also via the Agent 365. So that is really great. It's great and not great because they are at many different places at this moment. So if I switch back to my environment, you will see that I have a report under usage. So manage usage. So here you can see your top agents by session. So here you see that there has been 600 plus sessions for a sales agent in my personal development environment. So this can give you already a good idea of how your agents are performing or going on. Another thing that I very often started opening at customers as well is the inventory. When you go to inventory like this, you get an overview of everything. But when you go to Copilot Studio, you actually get all the agents that are at this moment going on in your tenants. It is a mix of the agents created in Copilot Studio, but also the agents built by the user in Copilot Studio Lite, or these days Microsoft 365 Copilot Agent Builder, can be checked over here. The advantage of this overview is that you can see like, okay, what is the agent, in which environment is it living, and with the right permissions, you can also go to that agent and see and check what is going on. So these are already two possibilities underneath Manage. When you click on Copilot in the Power Platform Admin Center and Copilot Studio, you get even more visibility on the usage of your agents. Here you get more information about billing, for example. If you see that, for example, that a certain agent is billing or using a lot of credits, this is a place where you can see it. And based on the information, you can take certain action. And then the last part within the Power Platform Admin Center is via Monitor, Copilot Studio, and here you can follow up the success rate of your agents. And you see that the agents over here are not really performing really well because it's quite low, my success rate. And what you can do if to follow up the success of an agent, you can actually create alerts. So when you go to alerts, you can create a rule or an alert that if certain agents are below a certain success rate, so in that way things are really going wrong. So if the success rate is below 50, please inform me, because I don't want to add a task in my calendar to check every day what is going on. No, I want to be informed when something is going wrong, that I get all the information that I need. So this is the monitoring within the Power Platform. Of course, you also have the reports within the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, which I've shown before. This is what you can do within the Power Platform. But I already joined before my session, and it has already been mentioned, DSPM for AI and Purview. If you dive into Purview and this specific module, you can go even many steps further. You can see what kind of prompts that have been used, what kind of data, what is like the path certain people are following within Copilot, but also Copilot agents, to identify if people are abusing or misusing AI or Copilot within your environment. So here you can also find a lot of interesting information. Know that you need specific user roles to see all this information. It is not so that with a global admin, you can see all this information. So you need specific roles in Purview to follow up this information. And I don't have enough time to dive as well into Purview, but what I generally advise colleagues or people in the community is to watch this video. It's a really nice recording and it really gives you an overview of what you can do with Purview towards Microsoft 365 Copilot and agents. So if you want to know more about this, definitely check out this video on YouTube because it really gives you a good view on the possibilities. So, to conclude, many companies have Power Platform governance in place, but now it's also the time to start including Copilot Agent governance in the strategy. And that's something that I see at many places, that Power Platform governance, yes, but not yet for agents. So think about including agent governance as well. And know that agents can be used in several places. It can be used in a model-driven app. It can be used in a Canvas app. You have components from Copilot which you can use in a Canvas app. So consider all these settings as well. Review this and validate if you want to use it, yes or no. You can go even more in depth with threat protection and network isolation for your agents to set up even more security for your agents. Of course, a really, really important thing which I didn't touch on is a billing strategy. How will we work with agents when it comes to billing? Will everyone have access to a Microsoft 365 Copilot license? Do we use credits? What are we going to do? What's our strategy behind this? And then the last thing that I want to mention is deploy the Copilot Studio Kit. It will give you even more reporting, more overviews of what is going on concerning Copilot Studio in your environments. So definitely check it out, deploy it, and see what additional insights it can give you concerning Copilot Studio. And then the last part that I want to share with all of you is a governance template specific for Copilot agents that I created. Because when I had to go to customers, I always had to ask the same questions. And very often I forgot these questions. So at the end of the session with the customer, it was like, oh, I forgot this or I forgot that. So I collected all these questions in one template, which I'm using, but which can also be used by the community. And it's a template that contains all these questions, but also a space or a room for writing down all the decisions that you have made or that you have made together with your customer. So in that way, feel free to use it. If you have any feedback of like, yeah, but you forgot this or forgot that, and maybe turn it into or add something additional, feel free to reach out to me so that we can keep on working on this document so that it can help us defining Copilot agent governance strategy. And with that, I want to end. So big thanks for joining. It would be really awesome if you could rate my session. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Like said at the beginning, I'll answer them on Teams because I need to run to my taxi or to my bus, I mean.
No worries, Tom. It was awesome. Thank you very much for your session. At the airport, I guess it would be lovely to get your presentation back, but no pressure at all.
No, it's. I assume that we share the presentation afterwards. So yeah.
Awesome. So yeah,
So
you have a positive feedback post session, and the question about the slide deck was already asked. So yeah, we are wishing you a safe flight to home, and it was lovely to have you with us this year. And maybe you will consider to fill in the session for the collab days, which will be held in the mid of June.
yeah,
And as the follow-up in the September, we have also the Baltic Summit. So hopefully we'll meet you in person.
yeah. I hope I can make it to Poland.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you all very much for joining and to listen to me, and I'll share the presentations. If you have questions afterwards, just drop them in the chat over here or reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much, and have a lovely day.